one. And the last one. Good to go. We want the whole story, gory bits and all.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm really
show
sure
you.
like you probably need to camera them.
What is going to happen is, obviously we've met before. You have your questions there to your right hand side.
Okay, so I go in by number.
Okay. Honestly, you can just go through them at your own pace. Are you ready?
Oh. Okay, here we go.
Okay, question 1. What's your diagnosis and what type of business do you run?
I have dyslexia and I'm seeking a diagnosis for ADHD.
My diagnosis is OCD, and together we run a company called Neurodivergent, where we're looking to design inclusive tools specifically to help the neurodivergent community.
So I have a formal diagnosis in ADHD and I have a undiagnosed autism as well. I don't actually have a diagnosis, but I very strongly suspect that I have ADHD. So I'm diagnosed with combined ADHD, but I also definitely have some autistic traits. So I run a design studio working with women and LGBTQ+ funders and organizations. So the business that I run is, not surprisingly, I'm a neurodiversity coach and trainer. I also have dyscalculia and aphantasia and alexithymia. I feel like it's like Pokemon, like gotta catch them all at this point. We basically help people to write and publish books on like their subject matter expertise.
I've got my own little special label. So I have an ADHD diagnosis, inattentive, which I had about 3.5 years ago now, I think. Yeah, so that's where I am in terms of sort of formal diagnosis. Probably got a bit of a spiky profile, I think.
A spiky profile is a really good way of describing the differences in neurocognitive abilities. And what I mean by that is that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. What you tend to find is that neurotypical people will have smaller gaps between their strengths and weaknesses. Neurodivergent people will have much larger gaps between their strengths and weaknesses. So they might find that in the workplace, for example, that they might excel in certain areas, have real talents for certain things that perhaps their neurotypical colleagues don't have. But they may also find things much harder, so they may need support in some areas.
And the type of business that I run, so it's a member association for other neurodivergent founders and business owners. This is an interesting one for me. In 1995, I was at university and I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Dyslexia back then, my diagnosis says I have a problem understanding myself, my other people, and my relationship to the rest of the world. And that was all good. And I was very lucky. I worked in design and it's been a beautiful environment. Decided about 10 years ago that this was right for me. And I took on a farm, beautiful, work in the countryside, went a bit south, and I ended up in working in an office, and I had a complete breakdown because I just can't cope with the world. And 3 years ago, I ended up having psychological assessment, and I was told that I have a neurological condition. The therapist was quite embarrassed to tell me this, which I thought was interesting because previously I'd spent some time with a psychiatric nurse who told me, my friend, you have mental health problems and you are ADHD, autistic with ADHD. So I'm like, wow. I've been assessed in 30 minutes and I'm in a limbo land, and that's created a lot of confusion for me. And I've spent time with therapists who are like, it's very clear from, you know, how you experience the world that you're autistic and ADHD, but because I come across confident and I've traveled the world and had my own business, I don't meet the grade, but I'm also not neurotic, psychotic, or schizophrenic or anything like that. So yeah, I feel like a fraud at times, which apparently is quite normal, but I'm definitely not neurotypical, and I've got a neurological development disorder. The type of business that I run is actually came out of the assessment that I had. The guy was just like, it's amazing how you've done so well in life, and part of that is your spiritual practice and understanding of yourself and mindfulness. And so I have been creating a business which is about promoting focus and emotional regulation and mindfulness for young people who are neurodivergent.
So I have autism and ADHD. I was late diagnosed. I was diagnosed kind of early 20s. And I run a media production business and a media technology business. And actually, I'm the director of this documentary.
So, number 2. How does being neurodivergent actually help or hinder you in running your business? Okay.
Well, yeah, that's a really good question.
Emails?
Yeah, it's such a weird one to ask, like, to just think of answers on the spot.
It helps me running my business, understanding my clients and being able to just get it helps so much.
I've heard so many people refer to neurodivergence as being a superpower, but also as being debilitating. And it seems like often people are kind of in one camp or the other with it. For me, it kind of varies on a daily basis. Sometimes it feels like a superpower, and other times it feels like it makes life much more difficult.
I think one of the things that really helps me in running my own business is my passion for what I do. And whilst anybody can be passionate about what they do, I think a lot of neurodivergent people can be particularly enthusiastic or passionate about certain things.
I think hyperfocus is a wonderful thing. So I am sometimes able to do in a couple of hours what I think it might take other people half a day to do or a day to do. It has the downside, obviously.
I'm able to really zoom out of a problem and look at things through a different lens that I don't think many of my neurotypical colleagues really see. So I kind of have an approach to problem solving that is really different, and it's really, in a way that is very creative and not limited kind of like by the usual kind of like script that people may have to solve problems.
I do think that I'm an ideas factory. I feel like I've got about 150 ideas spinning around my head at any one time. You can probably hear like the clanking of spinning plates in my head. I think that it makes me quite creative, so I do think that I can spot gaps in things where a lot of other people don't. Where I can see connections. I think that, oh, so-and-so should speak to so-and-so and maybe bring in somebody else and they'd come up with something amazing. I don't know what it is yet, but I do think that it would be amazing. And I think that that's a bit of the ADHD, all of these sort of neurons firing up all the time and coming up with all sorts of random ideas.
I think one of the biggest things for me is, it probably sounds a bit odd, but being disruptive. I found when I worked in employed jobs that no one appreciated me being disruptive, and I was always told that I was negative and that I was pointing out like the flaws and things. And as a business owner, that's actually really helpful because you can take a look at a market or an industry and you can see what doesn't work, and you can find gaps in the market or things that could be improved and ways to make services or products or generally make people's lives better.
A lot of people with ADHD have delayed sleep schedules. So I'll often happily work till 2 or 3 in the morning because there's no one to disturb me. I'm in my peace place. This is where I get my focused work done. And it could be for hours without interruption. I might not go to the bathroom because I'm so involved and I have to get this done, which can be problematic at times, forgetting to eat and things like that. But again, I love the focus. I think it's a privilege to be able to do those things.
And another great thing is just resilience and just sheer bloody mindedness. because the business doesn't feel like work, it doesn't feel like a job, it feels like my passion project. And I know that I just will keep on going until I drop, which brings us nicely onto the hinder side of things.
Burnout.
Burnout.
It's quite easy to deal with burnout. I think maybe just myself, but I think a lot of neurodivergent people in general are quite obsessive. And I think the thing that me and Alison have become really obsessed with is our company. And when it's all you're thinking about and all you're kind of wanting to do at every waking moment of the day, it's quite easy to burn out and reach a stage of, oh my gosh, I need to step away for a few days and calm down.
So I'd say overwhelm is a huge thing for me, which I still haven't quite navigated properly. I think that I do just keep on going until I eventually hit a wall. I've got better, I think, as I've got older and I've got my head around having a diagnosis as well, at sort of spotting the warning signs of knowing when those times are coming, but it still catches me off guard in a lot of cases.
Admin can feel like pulling my eyes out, but again, there's ways and systems around that. So really fortunate to be aware of these traits so that I can kind of navigate them appropriately, because otherwise I would be really wondering why I can't do these things that seem to be so easy for other people. Whereas, yeah, knowing my label has been really helpful in the process.
I think it helps in a lot of ways, because I think that I've always been I've seen it being quite creative, and I've seen like me being quite a good problem solver because of my dyslexia. So I often find that I'll be thinking in ways that people in the room aren't thinking, and that's always really helpful for me. But that's when I'm doing my best. But when I'm struggling a bit and feeling a bit overwhelmed, it feels really overwhelming, and like my executive functioning really starts to hinder. So that's when I'm not replying to emails, that's when I'm not able to work out how many meetings I've got, or just struggling with what the day-to-day looks like, which over a prolonged period makes me just feel like I've not achieved what I want to achieve. So executive functioning is an umbrella term for like planning and working memory. So how that really affected me is it was really difficult to remember what had to go on in my brain at that exact time. So as a child, that affected me really deeply in terms of I would lose everything all the time. I couldn't organise myself. My mum ended up joining the school's lost property because it was such a pain for me, and how that ended up looking as a child was it created a lot of anxiety, and it created a lot of like mental health issues, being like I wasn't able to I was like, why can't I achieve the things I want to achieve? And I couldn't work out why my brain wouldn't work.
For me, I recently did my maths. Maths has always been a problem for me, and my tutor was autistic, and she just really helped me so much. There's so much understanding. Yeah, my life has just been about trying to keep up and pretending, and it's wonderful just to let go of that. However, there are problems, and yeah, I can do so much, but I also need some support as well. I've had to really fight very hard to get that, and yeah, I'm definitely getting there.
Oh, this is a good one. Do people think you're just jumping on the neurodiversity trend? Yes, particularly because I work in the neurodiversity space.
Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%.
Ooh, yeah, spicy. Yes, I've had my mum, first of all, saying, no, you do not have ADHD. That is the bad disease that boys get when they cannot sit still at their desk. Cool, thanks, Mum. Then my doctor said, I don't know if I should refer you really, because you seem to be having your life together. Like, I mean, you run a business, so like, I guess like there's a lot of like social media things and you think you do. I was like, okay, great. Can I fill the form now?
Yes, I think like I didn't think that I was ADHD because I looked at it in boys and I was like, right, that is, I'm a very well behaved child. I don't run around as these people do. I will sit down in my seat, and I remember the moment being in lockdown and scrolling. It was like seeing somebody talking about it in women, and it was like very quick emotions, and it was like this, your emotions getting very elevated, and it was seeing it as being a bit more of a dolly daydream, which was in my school reports at school, being like dolly daydream. And it was these kind of having these, it was that sort of like realizing that, oh my gosh, there's all these things that I was told years ago that it had to be this one type of thing, but now realizing that actually this is exactly how I'm feeling when I'm my lowest.
I think that particularly with the stories that I tell about my neurodivergency, I think that it does leave me as a bit of an open target to people who just don't really believe that it's a proper condition, you know, and that I'm making it up. Which, to be fair, all the way through the assessment and actually my diagnosis assessment, I still believed at the end of it they were going to turn around and say, yeah, basically you're just a bit lazy and you're just a bit confused, and it's not ADHD at all. So I was surprised myself when they actually said that I've got an ADHD diagnosis.
Even my family, whenever I first went back, whenever I first got diagnosed, I'd said to them that this was my diagnosis, and their response was, no, you aren't, because I have a very young cousin who is typically presents with stereotypical autism. So he's nonverbal, struggles to socially interact, needs headphones on a lot of the time, etc. And then went, but you're not like him. You speak, you socialize, you know what I mean? That you can't be. And that was definitely a case where it's just, this is the stereotype. You don't fit the stereotype, therefore you can't have it.
I think a lot of people see it as a trend because all of a sudden there's all this information out there, and it's very easy. It's a lot easier than what it used to be to be like, oh, that sounds very familiar. That sounds like my day-to-day life. That sounds like me. And I was diagnosed 15 years ago with dyslexia, and at the same time they suggested an ADD diagnosis, but there wasn't a lot of information out there. And the only reason my mum knew about dyslexia was because of my sister, and that was 8 years prior to that. ADD is, so ADHD and ADD used to be two different, they kind of came under the same, very similar conditions, but one, so ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, you had that hyperactivity aspect, where ADD was almost like inattentive, I think it's called. Inattentive ADHD is what it's now called, but it was attention deficit disorder. And because like as a child, I didn't have that running around and being disruptive in class and that hyperactivity you see in boys. Now I think they've realised that they were like, these are very similar conditions. They've now put it under one umbrella, which is ADHD.
I think because a lot of this new information, or I guess widespread information, has come about through social media, people probably look at it as a trend. I'm going to look at the dramatic camera here. Social media is brilliant for sharing stories about being neurodivergent. I think people sharing their lived experiences on social media is the reason that so many people now feel more comfortable in their own skin. Previously, that information was clinical and it was, you know, embedded in research, or in Alison's case, you had to maybe know of someone else who's gone through a diagnosis or someone else who's dyslexic to get a dyslexia diagnosis yourself. Now you've got hundreds of thousands and millions of people online talking about their day in, day out experiences. And I think for especially young people who are actively on these platforms, that information intake is a positive thing. I don't think you should necessarily scroll through TikTok, watch one video and go, right, yeah, and self-diagnose. But you can learn so much about yourself from hearing about how other people talk about themselves.
You know, when my needs are met, I fly. and when stuff goes wrong, and I'm just the slightest thing, the reaction is sometimes just like, I'm gonna die from, just somebody tooting their horn at me or knocking on my door.
I think that as we've seen more people talking about neurodiversity, there's more in the media, there's more role models starting to say that they have diagnoses or that they feel that they are neurodivergent, and telling their stories. So I think in a way, it's a really exciting time for neurodiversity and neurodivergency to be talking about, to be having these conversations. But inevitably, I think that there's still a huge education piece. I think there's still a lot of winning of hearts and minds, and telling our stories about what it's like to be neurodivergent. I think that lots of people still think that it's, oh, you're a little bit muddled, you're a little bit confused, you're not great at prioritising your workload, and we're all a bit like that, aren't we? And to some extent, yes, of course we are. But I think it is a different experience being neurodivergent, and also being a business owner.
Have you ever had to mask or hide it from investors or clients? I'm assuming it is referring to neurodiversity.
100% yes.
That's quite a difficult question to answer.
No, I don't think I have really.
I actually find masking really difficult. About a year ago, I was in the US, and I was raising funds at that stage for my media technology company. And the political landscape in the US right now isn't favourable for autism and neurodivergencies and things like that. So I was really conscious, actually, because some people have incredibly harsh views of neurodivergency, but unfortunately that is a reality.
I think so before doing this business venture, I did architecture at uni and I was applying for jobs. I remember my mum being like, oh, lots of architects seeing dyslexia as like a brilliant thing to have. And I've always been so positive about my neurodiversity that I put it in my applications. I want them to know that I have this unique thing that's going to really enhance them. And I got into a job where they understood it, they supported me really well. But I actually now realise that might have been a hindrance for some people who didn't understand it.
No, I think because of the business I'm in as well, where I'm talking a lot about being neurodivergent, it hasn't really been the case. When I've been self-employed for about 14 years, and I guess before that, when I wasn't sort of shouting about being neurodivergent, I think inevitably I was masking particularly things like overwhelm and burnout, because it's not what you do as a business owner, is it? You need to be on it, and you need to be really confident, and you need people to know that you're reliable and that you're not going to have days where you're just like, yeah, sorry, I was just like facing a wall and I couldn't actually do anything. And clients don't want to hear that. So I've definitely masked in the past.
Most neurodivergent people are either still masking or have masked at various points in their life. And when I look back, before I realised that I was neurodivergent myself, I can see that I was masking, although I didn't know it at the time.
With clients, I make a point to be really straightforward and transparent about everything we do, and that includes also explaining what's going on for me. Again, whether I disclose my diagnosis or not, I do like to say, would you mind repeating this, because I did not, maybe I zone out, or like I say something like, can I use my note taker in this call because it helps me kind of keep my focus, or kind of go back to the notes after.
I don't think I mask in front of clients, mainly because most of them are neurodivergent themselves, and they all have a very good understanding of what it means to mask and what it means to unmask.
With investors or kind of like funders in general, it's been kind of interesting to see how it's almost becoming a bit of a box ticking exercise, and in a way it's positive to disguise that I have a disability, and that kind of like helps in a way.
So I think there's definitely pros to being open about it, but I still feel like there's this narrative, there's stigma attached with neurodiversity where you almost want to watch what you're saying at all times. and not be too out and proud about it. It's a tricky one for me, I think.
I would say I am more likely to mask when I'm at networking meetings. I started going to face-to-face networking meetings last year, partly as a way of trying to meet new people and to build my business. And I've never been very fond of networking. Going into a room full of complete strangers used to terrify me. I've got a lot more used to it now, but I'm not very good at small talk, so I just found that excruciating. Going along, sitting with a room full of people, most of whom were very nice and friendly and supported, but just being in a room full of people I don't know, trying to make conversation and not really getting it. So I've always felt out of place in situations like that.
I've noticed, like, whenever I've done talks in the past, whether it's like panel talks or podcasts or things like that, I'm much better when I'm not prepared and when I can just talk freely and just be myself. Whereas if I know I have to follow a certain structure and I'm like, okay, there's these 7 points that I have to get across in this pitch presentation, I do really badly and like my mind goes completely blank. So I know that I don't give the best impression of myself anyway in those scenarios, which then would make it very difficult if I wanted to pitch for investment or something like that, because I just feel that that way of having to communicate with people just doesn't work for me at all. Whereas if I could just maybe sit down and go for dinner with an investor, like I would happily just chat to them and be completely honest and be myself, and you know, I would personally find that a lot easier.
Even filming this documentary, I'm there thinking, oh, who's going to see this, and are they going to look at this and go, oh, you know, we now think differently about Daniel and Alison, and you know, maybe it weakens our image. But I think it's important to talk about these things.
Yeah, I feel like I'm educating people. Part of my entrepreneurial journey has been about trying to find investors and to link up with other businesses, and you know, in getting my business plan together, there was a whole education that I was giving to Business Gateway and to angel investors. Yeah, I don't mind doing that, but at the same time, I feel that I want some help and some understanding. It's been very difficult to get that. I've really had to scratch around and just to be understood. And so, yeah, I've struggled to get that support.
It's so interesting to see also the response that often I get. I thought that in a way was not a bad thing, but obviously there's a lot of pressure and on kind of what it means to be a founder and entrepreneur and what does that mean. But I guess like when you disclose, oh, sorry, I have ADHD, I'm struggling to find the words, and the amount of time that people actually says, oh my God, me too. And that's brilliant, like having that moment of like sharing that connection and just being able to say, okay, can we just like take the mask off and just be ourselves, and like so that we can be more creative, more present, we worry about the right thing and not worrying about being and showing ourselves for who we're not. So yeah.
In the past, I have masked and I come across like an argumentative, opinionated, troublesome individual. Whereas actually I just care, and I've got insight and perspective, and I want to make the world a better place.
How can you run a business if you can't function normally? You can't?
Meds.
Oh, that's a difficult question.
I'm not even sure how to answer that.
Good question. So that's how we run it. So yeah, can you run a function normally? Yes.
I think it's a bit of a ludicrous question. I mean, I think we've touched on it a little bit, but there's so many positives to neurodiversity that make it almost a tool that can be used to your advantage when running a company.
If you're in the spot where actually your neurodivergency isn't managed, you can't run a business. But I think that's the most important part about all of this, because really and truly, outside of exceptional conditions that are generally out with your control, if you know about your neurodivergency, you should be able to manage it. You should be able to function normally. Currently in workplaces, we don't always have the accommodations needed for our neurodiverse people, or in fact any people, like all people, to be as successful as they possibly can. I think that needs to change drastically, because that's the determining factor about whether you're able to function normally or not, rather than my neurodivergency.
From what I've learned of the world and what I see of the state is actually, I think I've got my shit together more than a lot of people. I'm willing to look at myself and I'm willing to kind of like say, this is who I am, this is what I can do, but these are my limitations. And I've been taught about, you know, safe communication and being able to, anything human is mentionable and anything mentionable is manageable. And, you know, I will put my hand up if I've made a mistake or if I don't know what something is. And I really find that really frustrating in business, is the bullshit and the reading between the lines and not wanting to offend and to, you know, be this perfect person or this, or dealing with male kind of machismo and kind of macho kind of, it's so much ego. I'm not about my ego. I'm about solving problems and trying to, you know, generate nice ideas and be a pleasant person and enrich everything.
I hate the word normal and I avoid using it most of the time. There's no sort of normal functioning, the way I see it. There's no normal functioning. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses. We all have things we're good at, things we're not good at. And I would say that, I feel quite strongly about this, that a lot of neurodivergent people have spent their whole lives believing that they don't function normally. And often that's because it's been pointed out to them that they're stupid or lazy or not good enough, or they don't fit in, and they're desperately trying to fit in.
So I think we're all good at different things and we're all not so good at different things. And I know that there are people out there who are like absolutely amazing at all of the tasks I mentioned earlier that I'm not good at, like organisation and planning, prioritising, like goal setting, deadlines, like all of these things. And so it doesn't make sense for me to try to do those things, struggle and fail, when I could find someone who's really good at those things and enjoys them, and like they could do them instead. So I guess it's kind of like building a support network of people with like complementary skills, and particularly like people who understand each other and they get that you find something difficult, so they will do their best to support you. And the same back, like if you know they find something else difficult, then you would support them back.
So it's not a case of functioning normally or not. It's more a case of working out what works for you. You do have to get to know yourself very well, and that can be a challenge to begin with, particularly for someone like me who at a very late stage realised that they were neurodivergent. But it's not about functioning normally or not.
I'm going to challenge normally as well, as in just challenge the use of normality, because it's used all the time. If you're neurodivergent, you're not normal. Normal is not being neurodivergent, neurotypical, which is just such shite. We've been to schools up north where they think, or they believe that over 70% of the children within their catchment area are neurodivergent. It's also, I mean, we're looking at spectrums here. You're not, there's obviously, there's diagnoses, but I mean, what's the term that they now use? Neurospicy. I think everyone's got a little bit of something. And I just think if we continue to talk about neurodiversity here and normal neurotypical people here, and we treat them as separate things, we're just not going to see any progress. We need to start looking at inclusive solutions that kind of, I guess, cater for everybody. I always get bugged when the word normal gets used.
I never use the word superpowers because I think that it's, for some people, that it really isn't a superpower. But I think that I thrive much more as being self-employed than I ever did as an employee. And it took several decades for me to actually realise that. And I think I only realised that when I started working for myself. So neurodivergent people definitely function normally, as that's the expression. We just have different ways of doing things. And I think if people understand more about that, there'll be far better understanding of neurodiversity in general.
Being a founder requires you to jump around all the time, and you need to do a bit of everything all the time and jump between finance and marketing and creative and pitching and all of these things. And it really keeps my brain engaged all the time in a way that I did not expect.
Doesn't everyone have a bit of something? Yes, they probably do.
I kind of like this question because I don't think that there's a right answer.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist.
A bit of something. What? Everyone's on the spectrum, aren't they?
Oh, that is my favourite question.
I get questions like this a lot when I'm running training courses. Usually about autism, like, oh, we're all a little bit autistic, aren't we? And we're not.
So somebody this very week, when I told them I'd got ADHD, said these very words to me. Doesn't everybody have a bit of that? A bit of feeling disorganized sometimes, and a bit of feeling like they're imposters in their work, in their jobs. And yes, of course they do. Of course they do. Of course, those feelings are part of, particularly of running a business, of being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. But I think when you chuck neurodivergency at the situation as well, then I think it makes it so much harder. And I think that it's just really tough. There's some days where you just cannot function. And I don't think that people who aren't neurodivergent have those same sort of huge heights and then really dramatic lows that a lot of neurodivergent business owners and people have to cope with.
I often feel quite annoyed at this question because it comes up a lot and I find it really dismissive. I have autism. That helps and hinders me in different ways at different times. But as I said earlier, I do think it's a disability. It does disable me at different times, and it has done before. Does that get in the way of my life day to day? Generally not. I put my accommodations in place. Things are good. I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of what I do. I love it. It's good. I wouldn't be without it. Not for a second would I change it. But does everyone have a bit of something? Everyone has their challenges. Not everyone's autistic. Not everyone has ADHD.
If you ask me, I feel like neurotypical is not really a thing, but there's a degree of how much the symptoms can impact your life. Very philosophically speaking, I feel like we have set up a system in the society that works for very, very few people. And we all have to tiptoe around and kind of pretend that we're all like really working like that and we're really good at doing that, when actually everyone is struggling a little bit on so many fronts. And when it comes to, and I think that when it comes to being neurodivergent, again, like, it's how much are you going away from that line, from that, like, from what you're supposed to be, from what functional is.
I do find that a lot of people who tend to say to me, oh, isn't everybody a little bit ADHD these days, or a little bit autistic? They're probably the people who I would guess, in my unprofessional opinion, would probably benefit from an assessment and a diagnosis themselves, to be honest.
I don't know about it. It's like how I see the world and how I have to deal with it. Sometimes I feel like I'm taking hallucinogenic drugs. So I don't know if that's a case for everybody. As I said, you know, it's just like if someone gives me some really bad feedback or just confuses me, my whole world can fall apart. You know, it's just like situations make me vomit, or I just kind of fall apart, or I come out in hives. That's my big one. And you know, a problem arises and I go and hide away from the world, or I can feel suicidal. I don't know if everyone feels that way. If they do, then great, but I don't know.
I actually came across it on social media the other day, where we were talking about kind of the differences with like neurodivergent fashion choices or like neurodivergent style, and I mentioned that like it's different because we might have more sensory issues that mean like certain clothing is intolerable, and someone was like, yeah, but I find I find certain fabrics, like I prefer this softer type of fabric. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a case of like prefer, it's a case of if you put that item of clothing on me and it's itching, I will not be able to focus on anything other than that, to the point I like eventually will want to scratch my own skin off. And it's like the extreme version of, what other people might experience. I kind of try to explain it to people. It's like, imagine it's like a dial and you've turned it up to level 10 or level 100 to the point that you literally, as I said, you can't focus on anything else and you can't function normally. And it's also, I think, the difference between prefer and almost like a compulsion. Like, you literally don't get a choice in this. It's not a case of like, I prefer to wear a soft fabric. It's like, I have to wear a soft fabric, or I know I'm not going to get anything done today.
I hate the narrative of, oh, you can't label people because, that'll set them off on a different trajectory, or they think they're going to be less than. I think, yeah, throw the labels out there. Get them labeled early, because I love the saying of, I grew up thinking that I was a weird horse. I thought I was really bad at being a horse, but actually no, I'm a totally normal zebra. And that is a total and utter relief to have known that actually I was a normal zebra this whole time. Take the paint off me, I don't want to be a horse anymore. Done with that, throw that out the window. So 100%, I don't think everyone has a little bit of something, but the way that we frame it, yeah, it's not clean cut. It is definitely complex, it definitely has nuances, but oh my gosh, let me be a zebra.
We've spoken to people who think that they should just go away with labels altogether, and just, there's no longer people that are ADHD, there's no longer people that are autistic, everyone is just people. And I think if we could reach a point where, society is at that level of understanding, then yeah, happy days, that would be great. But until then, I think it's really important to be able to distinguish people.
It's not about kind of are you or are you not, but for me it's like how much those symptoms are present in your life to the point that you do need some help to get through tasks that for people are really easy.
Oh, it's just not very useful, is it, to say that we've all got a bit of something, because I think it is a very different experience being neurodivergent than it is being neurotypical. So, not really groundbreaking, but that's what I think.
Do you think you'd be more successful if you were neurotypical? Oh, very spicy. Do I? Honestly, no.
Nope. Like, straight up, I really don't think that I would.
Ooh. No, I don't. No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Well,
not.
say that.
No.
Nah, absolutely not.
Oh God, that's a horrible question. I don't know about being more successful. I think some things would be easier.
Yeah, no, I don't think
come
so.
back
I mean, I can't, I can't really imagine myself not having OCD. But no, I think for all of the, realistically, for all the pain and trouble it has caused me, I think there are still definite benefits, and it's part of who I am too. I think there's so many strengths that my OCD has shown to provide that have been absolutely essential in what me and Alison are trying to build at the moment.
I'm not sure I would have even started my own business, to be honest. I found it very difficult being an employee and working for other people, and I much preferred being an entrepreneur in some senses. Obviously, there are some senses that are very difficult, but I don't think I would have started a business if it wasn't for the fact that I felt like I was different and I felt like I didn't fit in the normal kind of working arrangement of being an employee.
I am not neurotypical. I've never been neurotypical. I don't know what it's like to be neurotypical. So I have made outrageous decisions about my career from the get-go. And I don't think that those were normal decisions to make. And I'm really proud of not making those normal decisions. I've written a kids book, I've been on multiple different trustee boards, started 2 companies, one of them media production and the other tech. I have no background in tech. Those aren't normal things to do. And I don't think I would have been brave enough, or I would have had the absolute desire for knowledge and to just try things out. And also I think that being neurodivergent makes me learn things, most things, really quickly and pick things up really, really quickly. Without those skill sets, I don't think I would have gone anywhere near where I am right now. And it does put you on a different path. And I think other people recognise that as well, where they go, yeah, what you're doing isn't quite ordinary. And it's like, yeah, it isn't. And I'm so glad it's not, because this is a bit wild, this is really fun. And don't get me wrong, I think there's multiple ways that you can define success. But given that I'm able to have a lot of fun, I'm able to have a lot of autonomy, I'm able to do really cool stuff and innovate, and yeah, I think that's success. And I don't think that I could have done that if I was neurotypical. I don't think that those were normal decisions to make, and I'm really proud of it.
You call it the art of looking sideways. I have a perspective, and this, as I said, like when my needs are met, I just fly and I can do really amazing things. And there are some things that I can't do, and there are other things that I can do that others can't. We've all got a little bit of the puzzle, and I bring this perspective and skill set to the world.
I am incredibly proud of who I am and what I've created with my business, with my life, with my community. It's very much because of who I am as a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, I think it's time to change the conversation that we have about what it's like to be a business owner and what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Because if we're looking at general society and at least 1/5 of people out there being neurodivergent, then I think when we come to look at entrepreneurs, when we come to look at all those creative people with their fizzy heads who are coming up with all of these mad ideas for new things, then the percentage of people who are in that space, in that creative fizzy space, is anecdotally but inevitably going to be much bigger than just 1/5 of that population. So I think it's time that we need to start thinking about, okay, well, what would neurodivergent business look like? You know, why are we just making tweaks and changes to what's already out there in terms of a lot of business support programs and things? Why don't we start building from the ground up and get lots of neurodivergent people in the room and just say, look, what would actually be useful, you know? Why do we have to pitch at the end of every business support program? Why do we have to sell our story that way to a dragon's den? You know, when it doesn't play to a lot of neurodivergent strengths, it doesn't play to a lot of neurotypical strengths. You know, I think there's a whole conversation there about what we do, about pitching and how we share our story. You know, what's wrong with an armchair chat, a fireside chat with a founder to find out exactly the same things that we find out as them pitching in some huge presentation style, you know? And I've sat in enough business support programs now to know that there's different ways of doing things, you know? And I know that there are people in those rooms, in those programs, who are suffering, who are not accessing what's available. But there's better ways that we should be looking at, but that conversation seems to be happening really slowly. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that, no, I don't think I would be more successful if I was neurotypical. So, there we go.
Last question.
What do you want people to know more about neurodivergent entrepreneurs?
So, that's a good question. What do I want people to know?
I think if you're working with someone, it's really important to know about that individual specifically and how their neurodiversity affects them specifically, because again, it's it's not neurodivergent and neurotypical. Even within that bubble of neurodiversity, or that bubble of dyslexia, that bubble of ADHD or OCD or autism, people function differently from one another. So yeah, I think if you need to be curious and you need to ask questions, and I guarantee most of the time if you're asking a question and you're coming from a point of empathy, people are not going to be offended by you asking a question.
Yeah, I guess the main thing is just that we're all different. We all experience like different challenges. We all have different skills, kind of strengths. We're all unique. And so even if they have, heard something on social media or they've read something, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is exactly how we will experience life or how we'll think about things or how we feel about things. And so probably just taking the time to like get to know us individually and understand, if we behave a certain way or react a certain way, understanding like why that is.
I love when people ask me what my disability means to me and what can they do to help, because that put me in the position to kind of like explain and give context for some of the things that I say, that I do, my being impulsive, my kind of ranting and going on tangents and all of that. And yeah, I feel like sometimes people tiptoe around you if they know that you have a disability. Again, they don't know what to ask, they don't know they don't know how to behave. So yeah, I mean, like, I guess like you would do with anybody else, just ask. Just don't assume anything about us. Like if you know someone that has autism, that has ADHD, don't assume that everyone will act and behave the same way, because we're really different. They say it's a spectrum. I think it's just this way so much more of that is just not from A to B and you're somewhere there. So just don't assume and always ask.
I think one thing I'd like people to know is that there's a reason why a lot of neurodivergent people become entrepreneurs, and it's because the workplace, our traditional workplace, doesn't work for them. Some workplaces are obviously better than others, and some employers are much more understanding and supportive than others. But for so many people, the workplace just doesn't work. And at the moment, with lots of employers trying to get people back into the office rather than working from home, this can be an absolute disaster from some neurodivergent people. So it's not surprising to me anyway that a lot of people leave the workplace and set up their own business.
Overall, neurodivergent entrepreneurs, we're not flaky, we're not a liability, we're not horrible people to work with or anything like that. We can be great fun. We're generally extremely passionate. We've chosen the pathways that we've chosen because we really care. We really want to do this. Generally have become like self-made experts, like self-selected experts and things like that, because you're able to go down these rabbit holes and things, and it is all consuming in a way that I don't think happens in other scenarios. That all consuming power, that power to learn, that power to dive right in, that no one wants to say it, that is a superpower. Being neurodivergent isn't a superpower. It has its setbacks, it has its strengths, but oh my gosh, in terms of entrepreneurship, it is an amazing strength. And yeah, I think that generally to work with amazing neurodivergent entrepreneurs is an incredible privilege.
I think neurodivergent people are the canaries in the coal mine. They're such a powerful tool to, if you actually sat down and you were like, what is it that you need help with, and don't be apologetic, and we will try and support you the best we can. They will tell you exactly what is going wrong in the institutions that they're working in. They'll be able to tell you, they'll be the first people to call out or say that they're struggling in it. And it means that you're able to adapt and you're able to make a space that better suits everybody, because they'll be the first people to recognise it, and they're such a powerful tool for that. I think it would be looking at it through a neurodivergent lens and being like, okay, rather than let's set up this system for the average person, and then let's look at neurodiversity afterwards as a bit of a accessibility afterthought. I think if you look at it from the people who need it the most and the people who will benefit it from the most, you are much more likely to naturally filter down and help everybody. And those people, those neurodivergent people, will be able to thrive, because I think if they get the support they need, then they're unstoppable.
You've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, you know. So I come with my own little manual, a manual of me, which I give to people when they work with me, so that they understand what I'm about, what I can do, and what my triggers are. That's been really beneficial work, as well as kind of like identifying what my values are. I've done a lot of work, a lot of self-development work, looking at all of that to help me just to ground and understand who I am. Yeah, I think it's just a bit more patience, really. But you know, what I'm trying to do and the adjustments that I need, I think they're of benefit to everybody. And I think it's like what helps me hopefully helps other people as well. And again, that just gets back to that idea for me about making the world a better place for everybody. That's it.
Thanks for having me. Done. Hi everyone, my name is Kayla Megan Burns, and as you will have seen, I am the director of this documentary. We wanted to make sure that we're able to include a little bit of a disclaimer and a debrief at the end of this. So I'm here with the wonderful Lucrezia.
Hi everybody, my name is Lucrezia Casuli and I am one of the academics here at Strathclyde Business School. Most of the work that we do here is on inclusion and social innovation, and this documentary was intended to showcase how neurodivergent entrepreneurs experience their daily life with the struggles, the ups and the downs. We have tried to include as many voices as possible, and we've been trying to represent gender diversity as much as possible, but there is a disclaimer here to make. Not everybody felt comfortable participating in this documentary, even when we offered anonymity, even when we offered not to show faces or to hear voices. And that is because many people still feel there is a lot of shame attached to being neurodivergent. In some cases, there are past experiences involving really traumatic events, involving addiction, involving imprisonment. Even though eventually this may have led to business creation and a new life, still the past that they hide is too painful to share. And this is why we would like you to keep in mind that we've tried our best, but we are not yet able to bring you the full spectrum of voices.
Bringing these stories to light, showcasing people as they actually are, it's a really important factor in opening up these conversations and helping tackle some of that shame, and helping set up some more productive systems so that in the future, actually, this isn't as much of an issue. So definitely, I think we've done the best that we can for right now in showcasing these stories to light. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to do a lot more, and hopefully this documentary will be one step in the right direction in order to making those people who are a lot more marginalised, whether they're non-verbal, whether they've had troubles or trauma in their past, hopefully this will be a good step in the right direction in order to bring this to light. So thank you for watching. We hope that you're able to take something from it.
Thank you.